Think forward. Think Research Channel.
In my previous life, Entergy, I used to run the back end of every Entergy coal-fired power plant. Now I run the back end of every Entergy nuclear power plant. And you know, my background is kind of environmental. I built hydroelectric plants in the early part of my career all over the United States, and built combined cycle gas plants all over the place. So I have a fairly broad background in energy, and especially in the environment, because what I've always been involved with is trying to, one, clean up the legacy of the past. America is a great place. We led the Industrial Revolution. If you read the Wall Street Journal this morning, I was going to bring it down, and the Premier of China, is that what he has? Is he a premier over there? I think that's what he is. He's saying that he was scoffing at the U.S. for causing the economic downturn that we're having right now. And I think the only reason that they had an economic upturn was probably because of the United States too, but that wasn't in the story. But it's interesting, you know, it's tough times right now, and many of you guys are in a great position right now, because as you finish your education, some of you may be a little bit ahead of schedule, but as you finish your education, we're going to be coming out of this little slump that we're in. And I have great faith in America and great faith in what we're going to do. So I think it's a great time. It's a great time for you to be here getting ready and getting trained, and there will be opportunities, and especially in the energy side of things, you know, it is the most important thing that faces our nation and the world right now is energy. When you look at it, the world demand for energy is supposed to increase by 50% by 2030. Today you have a hard time to understand that, but we will come back, and when we come back, there is a lot of things happening, and there's reasons for that to happen. The other thing that's really scary is that our heavy reliance on fossil fuels, but also the global warming which is happening. And you know, you probably have professors right here on your campus, some that will argue for global warming and some that will argue that it's not global warming. If you go outside out there today, you might say it's not global warming out there, it's global freezing for this. And I think it's a little cold for Louisiana this time of year. But there is no question that there is something changing, and we may be in a warming trend, but even if we're in a warming trend, the way we're living, the way we're using our resources is absolutely causing an acceleration of that. And I think there's very solid proof of that. I think the other thing that's really interesting is the economic growth that's going on around the world, and so the world's really changing. I think one of the most interesting facts out there is this. In 1980, India and China used less than 8% of the energy that was created in the world, was used in the world. 2005, they jumped 25 years, they jumped up to 18%. By 2030, they're expected to go to 30%. Will decrease from 22% of the use down to 17% in the next 25 years. And so there's lots of things changing. Over 4/5 of the projected increase of world oil demand will be caused by China, India, and the Middle East. And that's, you know, it's really changing things. Today, you know, when gas went to $4.50, I don't know how high it got here in the Gulf Coast, but when it got to that high, it's not like it used to be. You know, you could cuss oil companies, you could say lots of things, but today there's just more demand than there's ever been. And with India and China, there's a lot of places in the world that want to have the same lifestyles we've got. And so it's really changing the dynamics. And the marketplace out there, as you're down there trading, you know, all of a sudden those traders that are punching buttons buying oil, instead of you guys buying oil, are going to be we'll be buying it for China and India, and it's going to be getting more and more and more and more. And so it's really a changing dynamic that's happening out there. You can see China's the big one, the big driver. One of the most interesting things out there too that I think we all have to watch. Last year in the United States and Europe graduated 69,000 engineers. China and India graduated 670,000 engineers. So you can see we have some great competition ahead of us, and as people just, it's you who are our future. I mean, some of us are getting gray-haired and bald-headed enough that you know, we really have to look to you to where the world's going, and it's really going to be a great challenge to go. These other countries are rapidly going up. And what we've got to make sure that America doesn't do, that we don't fall asleep and we don't become kind of the Europe. I mean, Europe is, they have a nice lifestyle, they live very nicely, but they're not on the cutting edge anymore. I mean, they like 35-hour work weeks, they like those types of things. America has been strong because of people just like you who are dedicated to making things happen, who want to be entrepreneurs and who want to drive things forward. But we do have more global competition than we've ever had. I thought they were going to send this down and fix the 29. I was supposed to say 29%, but we'll hit my communications staff when I get back for not getting it back down here, getting it fixed. But U.S. energy output, electric sales, and this is from the Energy Institute, which is paid for by Entergy, and all of the utilities and myself all pay too big a fees to these guys. But electrical sales will increase by 29% by 2030. And right now, you know, by 2030, we're looking at 12.5% of that domestic power production coming from renewable sources. Obama's plan with the stimulus and stuff is to increase that up to like 20%, but it's still a very small number in the overall piece of things. And we're going to talk more about that. If you look at where stationary power, electricity basically, where electricity comes from in America today, about 50% of it comes from coal. Now, you know, large carbon producer, so we have some real issues there that we got to solve, but more important than those issues, we've also got to realize that 50% of the generation is from plants that were there has been one new coal-fired power plant built in America since the early 1980s. A lot of the power plants, Entergy's has some of the best ones, by the way. I mean, I've been to every one of Entergy's coal plants. They have some of the best. But a lot of those plants are in 30 and 40 years old, some of them up as high as 50 years old, and the ones that are 50-year-old really spew out a lot of carbon dioxide. And so there's a huge, besides just taking care of the growth, the increase in 30%, we've got some real issues facing America in replacing worn out facilities that are going to have to be taken care of and handled. Renewables, you can see it, and other renewables at 9.2. That includes hydro. If you actually look at wind and solar, that's less than it's about 1%, a little over 1% in wind and solar. The rest of it's hydroelectric there. Oil, 3%, natural gas, and nuclear is 20% of the mix. In France right now, nuclear is 80%. 80% of their power comes from nuclear energy. France has become the leader in nuclear energy. France and Japan are the two who are leading by far and away in nuclear energy. And it's pretty sad because I think nuclear energy is one of the more important technologies that's ever been developed by mankind, and we've let it slip away from us in America, and it's actually being led by other countries other than America now, and I think that's a sad situation for us that we've let ourselves slip into. And so as you look at that, the 19.3% from nuclear, those plants, the last one of those that was built was finished in the late 70s, early 80s, and so all of those plants are 20 to 30 years old. They're all being relicensed right now for another 10, 20, or 30 years. They're changing out all of the heat-stressed equipment and everything in them, but right now, if we went in and said, okay, all the older plants, they're all worn out, and we're not going to relicense them, we're not going to remodel them, we're not going to do what we have to do to them, we're not going to put new scrubbers on coal plants and things like that, this country would be, we have not kept up. I mean, the point is, we have not kept up on keeping our base load power up to date and what we need to have done. The other thing that's really interesting, if you look back over through history, the GDP of the U.S., up until there was a small period in the early 2000s when technology was really going strong, where the GDP did not actually equal the same growth in electrical power requirements. But the growth that we have in this nation, I think the important thing to draw from this chart is that history shows the reason that America is America, the reason we have the best lifestyle, the reason we have the best, we are the envy of the world. The reason it is because we've stayed ahead in energy. I mean, energy and infrastructure. It's a thing we've got that no one else has done. And our growth is based on having these energy sources available to us, and we do want to continue to grow and do that. It really takes a toolbox solutions to do this. You need to have solar, you need to have wind, you need to have biofuels, clean coal. How many of you have seen the clean coal ads that have been running on TV the last little while? Where they open the door and there's nobody, it's kind of true. It is true. a lot of people working on it. I mean, there's a lot of people working on trying to make coal. I mean, we were actually involved in one project at a salt dome looking at to see if we can actually do it. But it's a very tough thing to figure out how to hold carbon dioxide in the ground, and what do you do to groundwater, and there's lots of different things. So it's a very hard problem. America has a lot of coal. It's an issue. We are going to be 50 years from now, we will still be burning coal because we're going to have that energy. There's no question about that. And so there's a great opportunity there to move toward that. And of course, nuclear. We think nuclear has a big place to play in the future. Traditional renewables, solar and wind, are going to help, but they're not the overall solution. Nuclear power has to be part of the solution. And I think, this is just a little cartoon we throw in there. A guy standing in front of a nuclear power plant saying, I wish there was a nice, clean source, non-carbon emitting source of energy out there that was a big base load, but we have it. And nuclear power really is a very, very safe. Why nuclear energy? Climate change. We have to have base load power. Wind and solar, they're made great things. I was sitting next to the CEO of Rocky Mountain Power, which is a Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett-owned utility, and they're one of the biggest wind power utilities in the country. They have the biggest wind farms. They generate more from that. They're averaging, they feel really good about it, they're averaging about a 38% factor on their wind power, which is really, really good. I mean, that's much better than most wind does. But still, they only run 38% of the time. But the thing they found out is they run 38% of the time from 10 o'clock at night. All the time is from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning, when all of us are asleep and the power demand goes way down. They're really struggling with that. They're a big coal utility also, and so what they're trying to do is slow their coal plants down. Slowing the coal, the two things you don't want to do is slow coal. When you turn a coal plant on and you turn a nuclear plant on, you want to just let them run. That's your base load. That's what you want to have out there running, because it's the most efficient power from an economic standpoint that you can have. You want those running steady. Well, they're turning their coal plants down at night, and what they found is they're actually, because they're turning it down as they bring them back up in the morning, they're actually creating more CO2 by running the coal plants up and down than they're saving with the wind power. And so wind is good, and we need to work on wind. I like T. Boone Pickens' ads. I think he's doing a great job, and he owns wind power and he owns natural gas. And the thing he forgets to say is that for every kilowatt of wind, you have to build a kilowatt of gas. And the other thing that's not said is if you build combined cycle gas, it does save CO2. But if you build single phase gas, just straight jet engines basically running, it actually puts out more CO2 than coal does if you're just burning it through one time without a combined cycle. He has got the idea for the interim, because there is an interim period right now. By the time you get nuclear plants built, and the time you do that, we have to have an interim solution to try to wean ourselves off of foreign oil and try to do more things. And my concern is that America goes to sleep pretty good. I mean, in Utah, we just got this new fancy rapid rail thing through the 80 miles of what they call the Wasatch Front, which is basically from Provo to Ogden, where 75% of Utahns live in this narrow little belt of land. And they put in this new rapid transit. When gas was $4 a gallon, everybody's riding the train. Well, it dropped back to $1.67 or whatever it is right now. Ridership has dropped by 80%. 80%. So, I mean, we are a convenience-ridden society, and it's more convenient to drive than it is to ride a train and get on a bus, then get on another bus and get to your work. And so, the scary thing about what T. Boone Pickens is doing, in my opinion, is we don't want to take this country needs an energy policy so badly. We have, 1973. I'll tell you how old I am, because that's the year I graduated. And just like you guys, some of you guys right now are interviewing. I know Wes is interviewing right now. He was telling me, I got a job offer from Bechtel down in San Francisco. And they gave me an airline ticket to go down there, but I figured if I drove, I could take my wife and And it would be my second time out of Utah in my life, and so I was excited about going down there. Well, I got to Reno that night, and it was the first energy crisis America had ever had was in 1973. And I got to Reno, and all the gas stations were closed, and ended up sleeping in the car overnight because I couldn't afford a hotel room. And waiting until morning until the gas stations opened up at 9, and there was a line of cars 200 or 300 deep to get into a gas station to get gas. We went on to San Francisco for the interview. And at that point in time, you know, America says we're going to have an energy policy. We're going to get off foreign oil. We're going to develop energy. We didn't. Japan said the same thing. Japan said in 30 years we're going to be able to survive without buying 1 ounce of foreign oil. You know what? Japan did it. They paid a big cost. Their energy costs were higher, and it hurt their economy some. But they are today between coal, nuclear. I mean, they basically are energy self-sufficient because they made the commitment to be able to do that. America, I mean, we can forget $4 gas in a month, and I mean, we really can't do that. We really have to have an energy policy, and we really have to move forward, or we're leaving not only my kids that are your guys' age, but your kids. We're leaving them a terrible legacy if we don't really do some good planning. What else have I forgot off of that? We have 104 nuclear power plants, nuclear reactors. EnergySolutions is lucky because we're the only company, we service all 104. We manage the byproducts. We're the guys that do the tough part of nuclear energy. If you hear President Obama, he stands up and he says nuclear energy definitely has to be able to, has to be part of the mix, has to be part of the mix going forward. But we have to know how to handle the waste. Well, that's what EnergySolutions basically is. We manage the byproducts out of every nuclear power plant in the country, and so we work in every one of them throughout the country. The nice thing about nuclear power today, you can see 1.9 or 1.76 cents. Entergy bought up a bunch of plants. They've made, I mean, probably if you looked at their nuclear power fleets, I don't know, probably making half your profits corporate-wide. A lot of them, because they really are very, very efficient. When you figure that the fuel costs are just so much lower than coal or anything else, it's just they're great plants to be able to have. Showing you where our renewable energy comes from, and I won't say just renewable. I call nuclear energy renewable because if you take spent nuclear fuel and you recycle it, 97% of the spent nuclear fuel can be reused over again. And I don't know any energy source that you can use for basically 4 years, pull it out, recycle it, which they do in England, France, and Japan, and separate it chemically, bring the uranium back out of it, remake fuel over again, and 97% of it's reusable. And to me, that's almost renewable energy because you're able to use it over again. It's safe. I mean, as you can see in the non-carbon emitting deals, 74% of that is nuclear, 4% is wind and solar, and 22% is hydro. So, you can take that 4.4% times the 9% of renewables of the total, and you can kind of figure out, see how much wind and solar is. A lot of technology. This country under the new administration is going to spend a lot of money. If any of you are interested in renewable energy, they're all hiring people. I support them. I mean, I personally own stocks in a lot of renewable energy companies because we're going to spend a lot of money over the next 3 or 4 years building renewable energy because it's a little bit politically good. It is good. It's going to do some of it, but it's not the overall solution. But it's a great opportunity out there right now to be involved in something that's fun and exciting. Solar, 50 years from now, solar may be there. They may have invented something and a storage system that they can do it. But today, when the sun shines, you get lots of power. When the wind blows, you get lots of power. But when neither of those happen, you don't get much. And so it's really that base load that we have to have. And so nuclear has to be part of going forward. The obstacles remain. We talked a little bit about they've got to become today. Wind and solar are only cost effective with the tax credit. In other words, if you just go out and want to go build a wind plant or a solar plant, unless the government's going to give you some tax credits, you're not going to go build it because it's just not economically viable with any of the other ones that are out there, and so you have to be there. Clean coal technology, we laughed about that earlier and where it's at. Biofuels, I mean, we proved a little bit about biofuels. I mean, we need to learn how to take it out of garbage. We need to learn how to take it out of other things other than corn and wheat. We've learned that we've really drove the price of, we drove the price of corn and wheat out of line, and so it's a good thing. It's helping our environment, but it's also, there's a balance. We can use a little of it, but not a lot of it. And nuclear, the thing we have to do there is we've got to give it financial stability and licensing stability. They've approved, Congress has approved about it. There are rate-based utilities and I'm now at a loss for words. Utilities that are merchant utilities that own these type of plants. In fact, Entergy has half and half. They're half rate-based and half of their plants are merchant plants. So a merchant plant is in there on your board every day, and you can buy and sell electricity every day back and forth off of that. You buy contracts for 2 or 3 years, or for 6 months, or for 3 days, or for on the spot market, and you're buying electricity back and forth. Those type of utilities can't, there's so much risk in the cost of nuclear power and building anything right now with the memories of investors and bankers from 1976, when they basically shut the nuclear energy down. When Carter decided he was going to shut it down, it just stopped. I mean, they just stopped. A lot of plants were half built. Billions and billions of dollars were lost to investors. We have to get that started again and give people the good feelings to do that. If you're an investor-owned regulated utility, such as South Carolina, such as Florida, such as Louisiana, they can say, look, we're going to put those costs in the rate base, and it takes the risk away from the utility so they can get financing and do it. If you're a merchant like Entergy is up in the Northeast, where they're just selling on the spot market, the risk to go out and, a utility that has a market cap of $20 billion and a nuclear power plant is going to cost, anywhere between $6 and $8 billion. That's a lot of money to put against a utility to borrow without a government guarantee. And so the Congress has passed $18 billion, actually as part of the stimulus, Senate side of the stimulus bill, are proposing another $100 billion to go in there. It's not really stimulus, so I think that's going to get blown out. But I do believe that the Obama administration is going to move ahead, probably with about $100 billion in loan guarantees, which will really move nuclear energy ahead really rapidly if that's the case. The other thing that you need before I go on to this slide is regulatory. You've got the federal government, the NRC. There's a lot of positions that need to be replaced right now in the NRC with the new administration. We're really going to be able to tell if the Obama administration is really serious about nuclear energy or not by who they put on that board right now. There's going to be 2 slots opening, which will be 2 people. If they put pro-nuclear people on that board, you're going to be able to say, well, they want to have nuclear energy. If they put 2 anti-nuclear, very regulatory-minded people on there, you're going to quickly understand that, that talk's cheap and that isn't really what they want to get done, because that's another thing that's really important. From the state of Florida just passed a law encouraging nuclear power. South Carolina. States also have a role to play in their big local communities. I mean, most new plants are going to be built where existing plants sit. The reason being, people have lived around them for 30 years. They're comfortable with them. They understand they're not scary. They understand there's nothing about them that's scary. And so it's easy to get a local permit. If you try to put a new nuclear power plant in an area that doesn't already have one, the education process is really, really tough to do. As I said about President Obama, he was in Nevada just before the election, and he made the statement, nuclear energy has to be part of the mix, but spent nuclear fuel is not coming to Nevada. We're not going to store it. We're going to do something different than store it in a mountain in Nevada, which is the current proposal by the U.S. government. And so it brings you back to recycling. We need to build recycling plants here in America. But the first thing we need to do in order to allow new power plants to be built is do some type of interim storage at the sites where you're going to build the recycling plants, because recycling plants are going to take at least 10 years to build. A place as these power plants are reaching the age that they're able to store the energy so that they can tell you as stakeholders that live around the power plants that there's a place to take it. One of the big areas EnergySolutions is we basically own one technology and the French own the other. And we own the British technology. We're the developers of that. We've worked really hard the last 4 years with the Bush administration and moved recycling along. There's 11 communities here in America who want to have a recycling, who want to be the sponsor of a recycling plant. It's kind of like having an Air Force base in your community. I mean, it's a $20 billion construction project. It's 12,000 jobs during construction. It's 6,000 operating jobs. And so there's 11 cities around America that have made application to and want to be part of that. And so there is an opportunity in the future to be able to handle spent nuclear fuel and do it properly here. Low-level waste, which is we work on that. The other thing EnergySolutions owns is the only thing we handle 99.95%, I guess, of all of the low-level waste that's generated in America. We operate the facility that takes higher reactivity in South Carolina. We operate that for the state of South Carolina. We own a facility that takes what's known as Class A waste out in Utah, and it takes Class A waste, so you understand what Class A, B, and C waste and low-level waste goes. Class A waste becomes safe to live on, plant potatoes in, and eat the potatoes in 100 years. So if you have in your backyard Class A radioactive waste 100 years from now, you can plant potatoes and eat it. You shouldn't have it in your backyard, but it's not that, it's not that dangerous, but it's not that, you've got to handle it properly. Class B waste is 300 years, Class C waste is 500 years, and those are the three classes of low-level waste. Then from there you jump up to spent nuclear fuel, which is the fuel rods that actually go in and out of power plants. When you recycle them, you take 97% out, 3% becomes kind of gunk. NRC and state support, we talked about that's needed in order to make these happen. The two main reactors that are being built around the world today are Westinghouse, which is a Toshiba, however you want to pronounce it, and the French Areva. Those are the two reactors that are being built. GE also has a reactor that they've sold out 50% of to Hitachi, and GE just is not keeping up right now. They've fallen a long ways behind. They do not have the focus. GE kind of became a bank for many years. I mean, they were making all of their money out of their financial side, kind of became a bank, and General Electric has really fallen behind, but they're the only really reactor vendor that's an American reactor vendor anymore, and so we've really fallen a long ways behind. We need strong world-class companies. You have one here in Louisiana, the Shaw Group. They actually bought from Toshiba 20% of Westinghouse, and they will be the ones actually constructing new power plants and doing things. And they're a great company, and they're working very hard, just like EnergySolutions are, is to try to become a world-class nuclear company that's accepted around the world to be able to do things.
For more information on the A.B. Freeman School of Business, or to request a DVD copy of this program, please visit www.researchchannel.tulane.edu or call 1-877-333-TULANE.
Think forward. Think Research Channel.